In the beginning of the movie, we see Iris, a young mother who has just lost her son. She is devastated and cannot bear the pain and darkness of losing her child. She pays her last visit to her son's grave atop the mountains. After a thoughtful moment, she contemplates ending her life. At that moment, a man walks up to her and introduces himself as Richard. He explains that he is also on the mountain to mourn his daughter, who recently passed away. He is aware of what she was about to do and tells her that he has felt that way at some point too, but for him, there is so much to live for. He emphasizes that ending her life wouldn't bring back her dead child. After hearing this, Iris shares how much she misses her son and how she can't stand the thought that she lost him due to her carelessness, pointing out that she feels like a bad mother who deserves to end her life. Richard looks around and remarks that, considering the situation, it's a beautiful day to decide to leave such a lovely place. He then walks away. After a while, Richard notices that he is being followed. When he turns around, he discovers it is Iris. They both decide to leave the woods together. Upon arriving at the point where they park their cars, Richard has parked his vehicle so close to Iris's that she is unable to open her car door. Richard offers to assist her, but Iris senses danger and rejects his offer. At that moment, Richard attacks her with a taser, and she passes out. After driving several miles into the woods, Iris finally wakes up, sensing that she is in a critical condition. She asks Richard about his motives, but he ignores her questions, instead talking about how she was about to end her life earlier. Meanwhile, Iris manages to reach a knife in her pocket and cuts herself loose. She immediately attacks Richard while he is still driving. Richard struggles to maintain control of the vehicle while defending himself from Iris's attacks, but he ends up crashing into a tree. Both sustain minor injuries, with Richard having just a bruise on his forehead. Iris threatens him with a knife, warning him not to get close or she will cut him. At that moment, Richard reveals that while she was unconscious, he injected her with a substance that will slowly paralyze her until her body stops all respiratory processes. Upon hearing this, Iris runs into the woods, scared, while Richard warns her that the more she runs, the faster the drug will take effect. To calm herself, she recalls the memory of her son playing with her in the past. After walking several miles into the woods, the effects of the drug start to kick in as Iris's legs begin to fail her, until they finally go numb. To hide from Richard, who is following her trail, she crawls under a tree bark. However, some ants begin to crawl over her body, making their way up to her face. Unable to stand it any longer, she screams, giving away her location. To avoid being captured by the maniac, Iris throws herself into the river. Richard warns her about drowning, noting that she can barely move her body. Ignoring his warning, Iris manages to stay afloat. Her body sails across the rocky part of the river until she finally stops at a corner. She starts to crawl but soon begins gasping for breath, and eventually, her whole body goes numb. A man mowing his lawn sees her lying there and walks up to her, asking a couple of questions. Seeing that Iris can't talk but her eyes are open, he turns her face upwards. He realizes that Iris can see and hear him. Iris improvises, using her eyes to communicate since that's the only part of her body still functioning. The old man offers to help her, carrying her to his house. He is about to call the police when Richard arrives at the door. Iris, using her eyes, blinks repeatedly, urging the old man not to open the door, but he does so anyway. Pretending to have been in an accident, Richard asks the man if he has seen his wife and mentions that he lost his phone during the accident. The man tells him to wait so he can call the police to help with the search for his wife. Richard ignores him and quickly enters the house, searching the corners for Iris. It turns out Iris had somehow moved from the wheelbarrow to the back of the cushion. Richard refuses to leave the house, telling the old man that he loves his wife and cannot bear to lose her. At that moment, the old man is about to give up Iris's location when Richard's phone rings, indicating he has not been truthful with the man. The old man quickly changes his mind and tells Richard that it would be better to call the police to help him find his wife. However, Richard threatens the old man. Scared for his own well-being and not wanting to be part of whatever is going on between them, the old man tells Richard to check the backyard, claiming he will see his wife there. As soon as Richard tries to go there, the man suddenly attacks him, knocking him to the ground, and immediately calls the police. Richard attempts to fight back, but the old man proves to be very strong, delivering some rib-cracking punches. Realizing he is outmatched, Richard tries to get into the old man's head, and it works. He stabs the old man in the leg before finishing him off with a knife cut to the belly, all while Iris watches in horror. After checking the other room without finding Iris, Richard decides to cover up everything. He grabs a gallon of fuel, pours it around the house, and lights it on fire. Before leaving, he notices the movement of the window blinds, realizing that Iris could be there. He quickly goes back in, carries her to the car, and blames her for making him kill the innocent old man and for setting his house on fire. Richard arrives at the location where he crashed his car earlier and begins to make arrangements to tow the damaged vehicle. Suddenly, a police officer pulls up. Upon seeing the officer, Richard quickly gets up to cook up some convincing lies, claiming that Iris is his wife and they recently lost their son and that's why she hasn't been talking much. She's starting to experience own life crisis which led her to start drinking alcohol, resulting in the car crash. And he's now here to clean her mess up. The officer doesn't believe him and asks Richard if he knows anything about the truck owner because they received a distress call from the owner of the truck and asks if Richard has any relation to the man. Richard lies again, saying he is just a friend of the old man and only borrowed his car to help recover the damaged one. At that moment, Iris begins to regain her locomotive senses but still struggles. She manages to roll down the car window. In a low tone, she calls out for help. The officer hears her and quickly approaches the car window to hear what she's about to say. Richard tries to stop him, but the officer warns him to keep his distance. Sensing that the situation is about to escalate, Richard picks up a hawser rope and strikes the officer with it, knocking him to the ground. He then delivers several blows to the officer's head to ensure the kill. After the act, Richard quickly drags the police officer to his vehicle and sets it on fire before driving away with Iris. At this point, Iris is shocked by the extent of Richard's actions. She demands to know his intentions and why he is doing this. Richard reveals that he was involved in an accident that killed his daughter but he managed to survive. While in the hospital, contemplating the tragedy, he figured out his true self, saying the few months he spent in the hospital bed not knowing if he's going to die. He realizes that to fill the emptiness he now feels, he would help the ladies who wants to self-delete to attain a perfect transition by abducting them and use them as his toy before disposing their remains. Seizing a moment of distraction, Iris tries to inject Richard with a substance, but her body fails her, and she cannot finish the job. Richard explains that even though her body is starting to recover, it doesn't mean she is fully healed. Because of her actions, he changes his mind and declares that he will take her to the final stage, meaning he is about to end her life. They arrive at a lake where a boat is waiting. Richard carries Iris to the boat and starts paddling toward his intended slaughterhouse. Feeling hopeless, Iris begins to cry, putting on a facade of giving in to the situation. She makes a final request, begging him to take out the toy of his dead son so she can play with it one last time. Seizing the opportunity, Iris stealthily pulls out a dagger hidden behind Richard and strikes him on his jawline. He manages to pull out the knife and tries to shoot her, but she manages to sway the boat, causing him to drop the gun and fall into the lake. Richard tries to climb back up, and Iris quickly grabs the gun and shoots him several times, causing him to collapse back into the lake. Her recoil control is very poor, and she ends up shooting holes in the boat. Helpless, lies down there as the boat begins to sink. Somehow, she manages to swim her way back to land. Seeing that Richard is still alive, she thanks him for giving her a solid reason to fight for her life, and the movie ends. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos.